5, 4. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Laura Hanson with Connect My Brain. We're so glad that you're with us. Well, we are in store for a great interview. We have Nate Deitz with us, soon to be Dr. Nate Deitz, who has joined us over at Connect My Brain. He's doing his peaking internship as a Life University student, and he's getting ready to graduate in March. How exciting. And then he's going to stay on as an associate until about December, when him and his lovely bride are going to be heading to Alaska. I keep trying to make it really cold over here in the office for him so that he can get used to it. I do that to you, don't I?
Oh, yeah. Well,
thanks so much for coming, and we're so excited to hear your story. So tell us about you.
Well, first, thank you so much, Dr. Hanson, for having me on the show. It's been so great to get to know you over the past few months, and just being able to experience how you've been helping so many people in the office. It's been really great to watch. So,
I'm so glad. Good. Well, tell us all about you.
Yeah, so my healing journey first started when I was really young, and the first big, trauma that I experienced was at my grandma's house. And so it was after a soccer game one day. I still had my soccer cleats on, and we were going to take a photo with my cousins and stuff, and we were climbing up a waterfall in her backyard, and it was these big boulders, and it was a big waterfall, and I climbed up to the top, and I slipped and I fell off the waterfall and fell about 6 feet and landed on my head.
Oh my gosh.
And after that, it was a major concussion. And after that, I feel like things started to snowball with my health. And later on, I developed really severe anxiety, and it got to the point to where I was so dependent on sleep medications to be able just to relax and get to sleep that every single night I was having to rely on this medication to just get a normal bout of sleep, just like a normal kid would. And it took me about 3 years to get over that, and I just remember one night I prayed to God to give me the strength to not rely on that crutch anymore. And just like that, like cold turkey, I trusted, and I decided to trust God. And after that, I was more self-reliant on my health. But the real shift didn't happen until later on, when I was in high school, that my mom was really sick. And so for 18 years, she thought that she'd been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is, it's a kind of a patch diagnosis that, doctors see a constellation of symptoms and they say, well, it's probably fibromyalgia, because we don't really know what it could be. But after those 18 years, they diagnosed her with Lyme disease.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 years.
18 years. Yeah. And so she went and she saw some specialists in California, and they decided to put her on these antibiotics where she'd get deep tissue injections every week, and she'd be on this anti-malarial medication. And I saw her health decline so much, and she was getting really concerned after 6 months. And so she went back to the doctors, and she was really concerned. She said, hey, I've developed these autoimmune conditions. I've been having migraines. I can't leave the house, and what they decided to do was double her dose, and they put her on an IV drip antibiotic and kept her on the anti-malarial drug for another 6 months. And she just knew that after that first year, Dr. Hanson, she wasn't the same woman that she was. She looked like she was on her deathbed. And I remember talking to her, and she said, I don't know what it's going to look like if I can't get past this, to me.
Wow.
And about that time too, that was right when Emily and I were getting married too. And so that was a really important time for us to have her in our lives, and to have a mom in our life. And so luckily we met a family friend who was really interested in natural health, and he was a naturopath, and he put her on this really intense detoxification process. And he told her to go see a chiropractor because you needed to build the resilience of your body, right? And I kid you not, after 2 weeks of that, she was back to herself. It was like I had my mom back
Wow.
again.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that really shifted my perspective in health. Western medicine has its place for sure, but when you cover up the symptoms and you're not getting to the root cause, you're only hindering yourself. You're hindering your potential. You're hindering, who you are and who you could be.
Well, and there's a couple of things, but I love the way that you put what the naturopath said about building the resiliency in your physical body.
Yeah.
I think this is something that is so missed when people think about chiropractic and unfortunately, I do think we've done this to ourselves, but they put us in this box that we're just about pain.
Yeah.
And like with my work with kids, I look at it as I am literally shifting physical patterns that are setting up as adaptive mechanisms just to help them navigate planet Earth. Let alone there's so much depth and layer to what it is that we do. But when I think about your mom's situation, and one of the very first things that they asked her to do was see a chiropractor to rebuild her physical resistance. She's going on this detox. She's getting adjusted. And what did you say? 2 weeks later?
2 weeks later, I had my mom back.
Wow. I mean, you think about, she was on that first round. Was it 18 years, you said?
Yeah. 18 years.
18 years of her life. I mean, that's almost a couple of decades.
Yeah.
Think about the change that goes on in the human body in a couple of decades. And she's like brought down to the weakest point.
Mm-hmm.
And she incorporates a naturopath and a chiropractor. And 2 weeks later.
Yeah. I know, it's amazing. It's truly amazing how the body was designed to heal once you fully get those, the pathways corrected, right? And you start, supporting the body's natural healing ability. Potential's limitless.
It's going to go that way. The other thing that I thought was really worth us breaking down for our audience is this idea of your situation.
Yeah.
When you had your concussion hitting your head and then your health snowballed.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important part for people to understand, is that I like to explain it like a bucket.
Mm.
And we can take so much stuff. I mean, these bodies are marvelous, but it doesn't mean that things are not being stored in there, cellular energies in there, depending upon what our life environment is like, as well as our health, our nutrition, our coenzymes and multi-factors. And you can keep filling this bucket. Maybe there's, some illnesses that go on. Maybe there's a trauma that goes on, a physical trauma. But there can be these isolated events that make it appear as though, I had this hit on my head and my whole health went down the toilet. And it really is a snowball because your bucket was full, regardless of what it was full with. That was the chain of events that then took it in a direction that you would never want anybody's health to go.
Yeah.
So you're young in the healthcare world, but think for a minute about even a couple of patients that you've seen in your journey getting ready to graduate, probably more over at the clinic versus here, or maybe there was somebody here. But think about what's a history. what happened to somebody that had that kind of similar situation and then apply to it the recommendations you made, the chiropractic care you made? I'll let you think about that. And I know for myself, I'm real adamant about mechanical chemical brain. And lots of times, people will come in and they will follow that path. But I get people that want to dip their toe in. Let's say they want to dip their toe in with neurofeedback. And then it starts the conversation. And then before you know it, we're finally getting to the mechanical part, the chemical part, because these bodies are truly designed to need many things.
Absolutely.
Are you thinking of someone?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a chiropractic student. She did all the things, I'm sure she ate really well, as they teach us in school, and she exercised, do all the right things, and I remember one time we were in class and it was a technique class, and I adjusted her upper cervical spine, and I left class that day and she caught me like on the outside of the building, and she came up to me with tears in her eyes and she said, before I had a lot of trouble hearing out of my right ear, but after you adjusted me, I feel like I can hear so much better out of my right ear. And it's funny that you say that earlier, that chiropractors are put into a box. Typically when you hear about chiropractors, you think headaches, back pain, neck pain, some sort of pain, but pain is never an isolated symptom.
Never. It's actually the last one.
It's the last one, right? And you can think of pain as your check engine light clicking on, and when you only address pain, it's almost like taking a layer of duct tape and just covering the light in your car, and just saying,
I laugh because the first car I had was a beetle bug. And my dad said, I will match whatever you can make. This car was on its last leg, but I knew nothing about cars. Uh-huh. And I want to equate that to most people don't know a lot about their body.
Right.
And I literally would take this turn all the time off of the highway, and my light would always come on every time I took this turn. And I literally just said, well, my car doesn't like this turn. And I never did anything with it. And my car basically blew up. So that's why I was laughing. It's like putting duct tape over your check engine light.
And you and I have seen so many blown up cars come into the office, that have been, really doing a great job of addressing the symptoms, but not really getting to the root cause of what's been going on with them for so long, And so that I'd say that's the biggest issue with healthcare today, is that people they're disconnected from their bodies. They don't really, they have no intuition of really what's going on with them. And so my health journeys, my mom's health journey has come to help me realize what true health is.
Yes, I bet.
And so what I've come to find is that it comes down to two terrains. And so here's what I mean by that. So when you look at a farm, and you really want healthy farm animals, you got to make sure that the soil's good. You got to make sure that, there's no foxes in the hen house. You got to make sure that everything's in order, right? And when it comes to the body, you got to make sure that you have all of the physical components of what makes a good body. And so when I'm talking about that, I'm meaning healthy fats, vitamins, minerals, proteins that help build the enzymes and the muscle in your body, the collagen that goes into your bones and into your skin, and all these different components, these help build the terrain of the body, right? And you have your microbiome, which you and I, talk a lot about, and that goes into really building the health of the body. And then the second terrain is equally important, but it's never really addressed. And this terrain is the terrain that the brain perceives. And so,
it's so good.
If you think about it, take for instance somebody with phantom limb. and they have this sense that there's something going on with their arm, but their arm's not even there, right? The brain is perceiving that they still have an arm there. That's a miscommunication and a disconnection from the brain to the body, right? And so it happens in so many other cases that are outside of phantom limb, but our brain controls every single function of our body. It controls the cells, it controls the organs, it controls all the tissues, and it's essentially the band director of the symphony of what's going on, right, inside the body. And so if we disconnect the band from the orchestra conductor, the band's going to go off course, right? You're going to have out of tune instruments. You're going to have all these things beating out of time, and you're going to try to, make sure that, without both the band and the conductor, you're never going to reach full health, optimal health, and full human potential.
Well, I couldn't have said that better. And I love this idea of the terrain. I'll put another example of this into understanding the connection between the body and the brain. The psoas muscle, and I've talked about this one before. So this is a muscle that's on the front of the spine. It's a thick muscle, and it literally goes into two pieces down into your pelvis. And it allows you to lift your knee towards your body. So hip flexion. So we think of a muscle, we think of the action of the muscle, and then we kind of let it go. But the psoas has another job, and it's directly connected to the arousal mechanism in the brain, where you're trying to determine if you're safe or not, and if it perceives a threat, and we're going to know that also as fight or flight mechanism, but it literally is going to shorten up and put you into this slight flexion, because your brain is trying to protect your body because it doesn't know if you're about to be stabbed, punched, or shot. So it's a way to put an armor in front of the organs of the body. Now, imagine if that's a lifestyle for somebody, living in a threat, living in chronic stress. A lot of times, too, I see that it's more of the adult population struggling with, I've been depressed in the past and I'm also anxious now. So it's almost like this dual bond, or this dual, I'm thinking of like a duel between two people going on up here in the brain. And if this chronic thing in your body is literally giving a feedback to your brain, wonder if your body is what is pushing the brain to experience these emotions that you're having. So that's why you got to look at the whole person. I never want to take away from anybody and oversimplify. That's not the point, but you can't separate out the body and the brain.
Absolutely.
And if we approach it that way, then we're giving that person the best of what they can use as tools to move their life forward. What do you think?
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that is something that I've seen so many times. Or you could take anybody off the street, and chances are that 9 times out of 10, they're going to be in something called sympathetic dominance. And that's that fight or flight, response, where their nervous system is completely unbalanced, where they're shifted to having these defense mechanisms, and these, they're stressed out. They're completely stressed out. And what stress does to the body first is it fatigues it really fast. And so that's something that we see so often, that people are stuck in these fight or flight responses. And people might say, how can emotions affect my body? How can something intangible really affect something like my body that's so tangible? Well, just think of the last time, if you work in an office, the last time your boss, threw a pile of paperwork on your desk, and said, "Hey, I want these done by the end of shift," right? And what happens is you're like, your traps move up, your shoulders move up, you start breathing faster, you start you start sweating, and your heartbeat shoots up. Well, if you think about it, the nerves that exit the spine and the upper back go to your heart and your lungs. And these are the things that are greatest affected by stress, because they have to work a lot harder to help your body overcome that stress. But when these patterns are built into you, you're stuck in that fight or flight response and you can't get out of it.
And now you're like a hamster in a wheel.
Yep.
You're constantly going in that direction. And what I have found too is that all of that stuff is there, but the person, you'll ask them, "Are you stressed?" And they go, "No," but they're grinding their teeth or they're keeping their mouth clenched, like you said, with the traps. So we could literally come up with a list for our audience and say, we want you to do this internal check and kind of think of it as a gauge. And what we want you to do is we want you to, how relaxed are your trap muscles? Are you getting headaches? Those trap muscles are like a giant diamond, and literally the fascia goes over the head. And this is where you might get what we call a hat band kind of a headache. So do you get headaches? Do you just want to like rub your shoulders all the time? What about your breathing? Do you feel like you're getting a deep breath? What about your gut? Are you going to the bathroom? This is, especially with kids, the way I talk to kids is I just flat out ask them, are you pooping every day? And when you talk like that with the kid, they're like, not every day. I mean, they're very open and honest. So what is your elimination system like? You are supposed to be going every day. And honestly, we're really designed that we should go a couple of times a day, not, 5-10 times a day, but you're really supposed to go like an hour or two after you eat. So what's that digestive state? What are you having to do all the time? I'm thinking about a patient. Well, she's not even a patient. She's caring for a patient. She's carrying a baby all the time. She's older in years, and now she's having wrist problems and sciatic. And I'm trying to help her see that staying in that constant flexion, holding a baby all the time, her own frame is fatigued, like you said. And so that has a tendency to irritate a nerve, like a sciatic nerve, which is a giant nerve. And people can get that kind of a pain. But pain, when you fire pain, this is so important. And you think of some things. Let's get this checklist going. When you fire a pain signal, you actually only need 10% of nociceptor to fire to register pain. The other 90% feeds back into the autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight. So there's that feedback loop. Mm. What else have you seen with people in chronic stress?
Well, I really like that you brought up the digestive system, because when you go back to the autonomic nervous system and you have the sympathetic and parasympathetic balance, and that's fight or flight versus the rest and digest and heal portion of the nervous system, when you're completely out of balance, the autonomic nervous system can really control blood flow and where it goes in the body.
Yes.
And so when you're sympathetic dominant, you're shifting all this blood flow away from the digestive system out to your muscles and to your skin, because you got to be able to fight or flight, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
my question is, if you're constantly in the sympathetic dominance, what's that going to do to your digestive system in the long run, right?
So what you're saying is when I'm in that state, I'm actually not getting blood flow to my organs. Is that
Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what can happen over time if I'm not, I mean, how do we get everything through our body, through the blood system, right? So what are we going to see in like a big picture idea? What's happening inside of that person's gut?
Well, I mean, you also got to think too is that with blood, it's providing nutrients, but it's also eliminating toxins out of the body. So if you have that
Yeah.
backup of toxicity in your body, that's messing with the terrain. That's going back to the terrain,
Yes.
and that's why we have to have that balance, right? Of what's going on in the body and what the brain is perceiving happening in the body, right? So when you have that balance, your body is a lot more able to be resilient and be able to overcome the obstacles that's faced with, right? But if you're stuck in the sympathetic dominance and you're having gut issues and you've been taking these probiotics for so long, but you're not getting any blood flow to the gut, right? You got to get to the root cause. You got really got to get to
Amen.
the
You
root
do.
cause.
You really do.
And so you have to their brain has to be able to perceive what's going on down in your gut so that you can start eliminating and you can start pulling in these nutrients so that you can start to heal.
Well, and there's so much focus about the microbiome. We've got over here this whole DVD series of a group of doctors that came together, and this is every kind of doctor from every walk of life that is on these DVDs. And now what they're looking at is that cancer is really a sign of a disrupted microbiome, and the particular organ that may be manifesting an overabundance of cancer cells, it just happens to be the one that was most taxed as the ill health had continued to go on. I mean, something like that is not going to happen overnight. So you've got to look at that this is something over time. And if we look at that history and we see where people have been, plus here at Connect My Brain, we measure the stress response. We're able to see what's going on in your brain, what's going on in your body. We do labs here. This is not any kind of guesswork whatsoever. But the cool part is we can also take what is going on for the patient and begin this journey of refertilizing, rebuilding that terrain. You know what just came in my mind? The episode from Chosen where Jesus had James and John till that man's field for them. And it was rock and branches and, hard dirt. And back then, of course, they didn't have any motorized tilling equipment. And it's literally them pulling this apparatus through the dirt. And then they do all of this. So it wasn't just about the terrain for this man and his family, but it was the terrain for his heart.
Yeah.
And that he could see a new beginning. Oh, wow. That just really came to me like that. And, that's the thing about being in healthcare. It's about bringing about hope.
Absolutely.
And re-educating and putting those right steps back in place so that we can move you in a different direction.
Absolutely. People are bombarded with stress, every single day of their lives, whether that be emotional, physical or chemical, as you're saying earlier. We're bombarded with stress from the news. We're bombarded from the things that we put on our skin, the things that we eat. As we were saying, like these things are intimately tied to our terrain.
Yes.
But the good news, as there always is, when you get things aligned, right, and you start, fertilizing the ground, as you said, and you open up the pathways to where your brain can really perceive what's happening in the land, really amazing things can happen. And I'm so excited.
I love how you said align, because of course that's such a chiropractic word, right? We like to align things, but that word is so much bigger.
It is.
And you touched on it. So one thing I definitely want our audience to understand, as chiropractors, when we went through our training, we did not just focus on cracking bones. We actually were trained in the entire body. And that is why we approach it the way we do.
Mm-hmm.
So aligning not only your structure, but aligning the flow of good fuel, energy, micronutrients, aligning. That's why the tagline here is transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's that whole body. Now, I got one thing I want to leave them with, and if you have something, the other thing that I want you to talk about, Dr. Nate's getting ready to graduate, and Dr. Nate's going to build his practice over here at Connect My Brain. What's the right patient for you? So the thing I want to leave with while he thinks about that, to the audience, whether you are looking at this on the YouTube, remember we've got the YouTube channel, Dr. Laura Hanson, which is all of the podcasts. We've got an older one, Connect My Brain, which is earlier stuff that I had done. Or maybe you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Google. We're so glad that you're here. So wherever you are getting this information, this is what I want you to do. Are you aligned? I want you on a piece of paper to make a cross, a plus sign. And at one end, I don't care how you organize it, but I want you to put work at one point, spiritual at another point, family at another point, and what did I say at the top? Personal? So business, your career, whatever it is. So personal, spiritual, family, business, whatever that is. And I want you to show on that line, put a reference point. How important is that to you? So where does personal land? Where does spiritual land? Where does family land? Where does career land? And it's supposed to make a diamond to show balance. When I did this for myself, I was out of balance. Mm-hmm. And so it is my focus to bring my life into balance like that. So check that out. Think about it. Okay, Dr. Nate, what kind of patients are you looking for?
You know, when you said that, I just pictured my mom. And, for the people out there that, they feel like they've been suffering for a really long time and they've tried everything under the sun and they still haven't been able to find their health, give us a shot. When you connect your brain and you realign your body's potential to heal, amazing things can happen.
Yes, that's good. Well, I thank you so much for being with me today. This is so great to bring you into this element of Connect My Brain as well. And we are so excited to have you here. And of course, your lovely wife, Emily, as well, who's going to be Dr. Emily too. So they're going to be just a dynamic couple. But again, he's going to be with us until December. So there's lots of time to get to know him as well. So any other thoughts that you want to leave us with?
I think that's great. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And, this is going to be a great year.
Absolutely. So if you want to get in touch with us, our office number is 678-501-5172. You can also go over to the website, connectmybrain.com. There is a form that if you want us to reach back out to you, you can send us a note. Tell us what days it's easy to get in touch with you, and we will connect, because this is Connect My Brain. Have a great day, and we will see you the next time. Be blessed.